Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today, we're diving deep into Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
Okay.
Now, I think most people know, at least the basic plot, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're going to really kind of unpack all the brilliance. So at its heart, Pride and Prejudice is exploring love, marriage, societal expectations, and how I guess our own prejudices can kind of blind us to the truth.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating about Pride and Prejudice is how Austen so masterfully weaves social commentary into a seemingly simple love story. You know, it's a novel that operates on multiple levels, really, offering both, delightful entertainment and sharp critique of the English gentry and the rigid social structures of her time.
Okay, so before we get too deep, should we do a quick recap for anyone who maybe needs a refresher?
Yeah, let's do a quick recap.
So the story, it revolves around the Bennet family,
Yeah.
specifically the 5 daughters, who are all, of course, in need of husbands. Then we have Mr. Bingley, a wealthy bachelor who moves into the neighborhood,
Yeah, right.
which sends Mrs. Bennet into a total matchmaking frenzy.
Oh, absolutely. And Mrs. Bennet's obsession with marrying off her daughters is, it's hilarious.
Yes.
But it also highlights, a harsh reality for women in that era. Marriage wasn't just about finding love.
Right.
It was about securing financial stability and social standing.
Totally. And each of the Bennet sisters kind of represents a different approach to navigating those pressures, right?
Yeah.
So we have Jane, the eldest,
Yeah.
who is beautiful and kind, embodying the ideal of feminine grace.
Right.
And then there's Elizabeth, our protagonist,
Yeah.
who's witty and independent
Yeah.
and very quick to judge.
Yes. Sometimes too quick.
Yeah.
But the contrast between Jane and Elizabeth is really crucial. Jane represents a more passive acceptance of societal norms,
Okay.
while Elizabeth really challenges those norms with her sharp intellect and strong will.
And then we have Mr. Darcy. He enters the scene with all the grace of a grumpy cat. He's proud, aloof, and seemingly very judgmental, especially towards the Bennets.
Yeah.
Which, of course, does not sit well with Elizabeth.
No.
Their first encounter is a complete disaster, full of snubs and witty barbs.
Yeah, setting the stage for their tumultuous relationship.
Right.
But, Darcy's pride, it isn't simply a character flaw, is it? It's really a product of his upbringing, his social class, and these rigid hierarchies of the time.
Yeah.
Austen isn't shying away from portraying the complexities of these social dynamics.
And to make things even more complicated, we have Mr. Collins.
Yeah.
Who is the bumbling clergyman who's set to inherit the Bennet estate.
Oh, Mr. Collins.
He's obsessed with social status and completely lacking in self-awareness.
Absolutely.
Which makes his attempts to court Elizabeth hilarious and cringeworthy.
Oh, he is. Mr. Collins is such a brilliant example of Austen's satirical wilt. He really embodies the absurdity of, social climbing and blind adherence to tradition.
Oh, and who could forget Mr. Wickham?
Right. He's the charming soldier who sweeps into town and immediately captures Elizabeth's attention.
Oh, yeah.
He's handsome, charismatic, and he tells this sob story about how Darcy wronged him, which, of course, just fuels Elizabeth's already negative opinion of Darcy.
Well, Wickham represents that danger of judging by appearances. He is the classic charmer with a hidden dark side. And Elizabeth's, initial prejudice against Darcy makes her so vulnerable to Wickham's manipulation.
Yeah, it's that classic setup, right? That seemingly perfect gentleman who turns out to be a villain.
Right. And it really highlights that key theme of the novel.
Yeah.
How our own pride and prejudices can blind us to the truth about others.
Yeah.
We often see what we want to see, right? Confirming our existing biases instead of looking deeper. And as the story unfolds, we see these themes kind of play out in all sorts of ways. So Bingley and Jane's relationship, it starts to blossom, but faces all these obstacles, due to social pressures and interference from Bingley's snobbish sisters and Darcy's misguided attempts to, quote unquote, protect his friend.
Right. Even in a seemingly ideal pairing like Bingley and Jane, Austen shows how external forces and those societal expectations can really complicate matters of the heart.
And then, of course, there's that iconic scene where Darcy proposes to Elizabeth. And it goes about as well as you'd expect. He's arrogant, she's furious, and the whole thing explodes in this glorious mess of Pride and Prejudice.
It's a turning point in the novel, though, isn't it? It forces both Elizabeth and Darcy to confront their own flaws and really re-examine their perceptions of each other. It's a painful process, but it's so essential for their growth.
And it's followed by Darcy's letter,
Yeah.
where he explains his actions and reveals Wickham's true nature. This is a pivotal moment for Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Because she's forced to acknowledge her own misjudgments.
Right.
And to grapple with the fact that her prejudice has blinded her to Darcy's true character.
It's a real aha moment for her.
It's so well written, too. I remember reading that scene and just feeling like Elizabeth's whole world shifts as she absorbs the truth.
Yeah.
It's like a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
But also incredibly satisfying.
Yeah.
Because you see her starting to break free from her own limitations.
Austen's brilliance lies in her ability to make us feel those shifts alongside her characters. You know, we're not just observing Elizabeth's journey, we're experiencing it with her and questioning our own assumptions along the way.
And as Elizabeth is grappling with all of this, her family faces a major scandal. Lydia, the youngest and most impulsive Bennet sister, runs off with Wickham, throwing the family into total disgrace.
It highlights the precarious position of women in that society, doesn't it? I mean, their reputations were fragile, so easily tarnished.
Right.
And the consequences of a misstep could be just devastating.
It's a moment of like pure chaos. And you see how societal double standards come into play. Lydia's reputation is on the line, while Wickham, despite his manipulative actions, faces far less scrutiny.
Exactly. Austen uses Lydia's situation to kind of subtly critique the hypocrisy of the time. Men could often get away with, behaviors that would ruin a woman's life. It's a reminder that those societal double standards, sadly, haven't completely disappeared, even today.
And just when it seems like the Bennet family is doomed, Darcy steps in, secretly arranging Lydia's marriage to Wickham and saving the family from social ruin.
Wow. Darcy's actions really reveal the depth of his character, don't they? He acts out of compassion and a genuine desire to help, even though it means associating with a man he despises and potentially jeopardizing his own reputation. It's such a powerful contrast to Wickham's selfishness and disregard for Lydia's well-being.
It's a huge turning point for Elizabeth, too. She sees Darcy's true character in action, his integrity, and his willingness to act so selflessly. And it makes her question everything she thought she knew about him, which just fuels her self-reflection even more.
Darcy's intervention is a testament to his personal growth, too, isn't it? He's learning to overcome his pride, to act with humility and genuine concern for others. And in doing so, he reveals himself to be worthy of Elizabeth's love, even if she doesn't fully realize it yet.
It's a beautiful moment of redemption, isn't it? And it really sets the stage for their eventual reunion. And of course, the much anticipated second proposal. But we'll dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Pride and Prejudice, where we left off with Darcy's heroic intervention, saving the Bennet family from social ruin. But the story doesn't end there.
It definitely does not.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that even after this, grand gesture, Lydia, the one at the center of the scandal, doesn't seem to fully grasp the gravity of her actions.
So like the weight of societal expectations just rolls right off her.
It really does.
She remains fixated on the superficial, like reveling in the excitement of being married, completely oblivious to the near disaster she caused.
Yeah, and it really highlights that contrast between her character and Elizabeth's, who's on this, intense journey of self-discovery.
Right, it makes you wonder if Lydia is even capable of growth, or if she'll always be governed by impulse and appearances.
I think that's one of the brilliant open questions that Austen leaves us to ponder. And it's not just Lydia either, right? Look at Wickham. He waltzes back into the story as if nothing happened, attempting to charm Elizabeth all over again.
He really embodies that saying. All that glitters is not gold.
He does.
It's so frustrating. But Austen so cleverly uses him to expose those societal double standards.
Absolutely. Wickham's charisma allows him to kind of escape real accountability, while Lydia bears the brunt of, the societal judgment.
Right.
Again, it's a stark reminder that those double standards, unfortunately, can still be found today.
So we have this backdrop of Wickham's deceit and Lydia's near ruin. And then Bingley returns to Netherfield, rekindling his courtship of Jane.
Okay.
But there's like this shadow hanging over it all, right? Knowing what we know about Darcy's interference the first time around.
It creates this sense of dramatic irony, doesn't it? We, as readers, know the truth, but Bingley's completely unaware. And it makes his, hesitant steps toward Jane all the more poignant. And Jane, bless her heart, is left questioning his affections once again.
And you really see how much damage can be done, even with, I guess, good intentions, right? Like, Darcy supposedly had to protect Bingley.
Absolutely. But this time, Darcy actively encourages Bingley to pursue Jane. He acknowledges his past mistakes, and he's trying to make amends.
Yeah, he's taking action, not just words.
It shows a real shift in his character, doesn't it?
For sure. He's demonstrating a level of self-awareness and humility that would have been unimaginable at the beginning of the story.
It's subtle, but it's powerful, isn't it? It really highlights how personal growth often involves, taking responsibility for our actions and seeking to repair the harm we've caused, even when it's difficult or challenges our pride.
And thankfully this time, love prevails. Bingley and Jane find their happy ending.
They do.
Which, in a way, mirrors the path that Elizabeth and Darcy are on, although they have a few more hurdles to overcome. And speaking of hurdles, we can't forget Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Oh, Lady Catherine.
She just can't resist stirring the pot. She embodies that rigid adherence to social hierarchy that Austen so brilliantly satirizes. She's horrified by both Lydia's elopement and Elizabeth's impending marriage to Darcy, seeing both as threats to her carefully constructed social order.
It's a threat to everything she believes in.
Her confrontation with Elizabeth at Longbourn is just like chef's kiss. You see Elizabeth, who at the start of the novel was so easily swayed by other people's opinions, suddenly stand up for herself and her love for Darcy with this newfound strength and eloquence. It's such a powerful moment.
The culmination of Elizabeth's transformation, isn't it? She's no longer that young woman quick to judge and easily influenced. She's found her voice and she's not afraid to use it, even when facing down, someone as formidable as Lady Catherine. It's a brilliant display of character development.
And it's also hilarious how Lady Catherine's interference completely backfires. Her attempts to prevent the marriage only solidify Darcy's resolve. And it shows how deeply he's fallen for Elizabeth. Societal pressures be damned.
His love for Elizabeth transcends those rigid social boundaries. And it just proves that, genuine connection can sometimes defy even the most entrenched societal expectations.
It's such a hopeful message.
It is.
But even with all this talk of love conquering all, Austen doesn't shy away from the complexities of family relationships. I mean, think about Mr. Bennet. He's initially skeptical of Elizabeth's choice, drawing parallels to his own unhappy marriage.
Yeah, and it's such a poignant moment because it reveals, a depth of character that we haven't really seen in Mr. Bennet before. We get a glimpse of, the regret that he carries for choosing a partner based on fleeting attraction rather than genuine compatibility.
It adds such a layer of realism to the story.
It does.
Love might be this powerful force, but it's not always enough. And Mr. Bennet, despite his, witty detachment, he clearly cares deeply for his daughters.
Yeah.
And he wants them to find a happiness that eluded him.
Yes, and ultimately he recognizes, the depth of Elizabeth's feelings for Darcy, and he gives his blessing. It's a beautiful moment of reconciliation and paternal support. He's acknowledging that, true love can sometimes defy those initial doubts and fears.
So we come to the joyous conclusion of the novel.
Yeah.
With the weddings.
Yeah.
Of both Elizabeth and Jane. Marking the start of their new lives, Mrs. Bennet finally achieves her dream of marrying off her daughters.
She does.
But even in her triumph, Austen doesn't let us forget her character.
Even with her daughters happily married, Mrs. Bennet remains, preoccupied with social standing and appearances.
Right.
It's subtle, but it's a brilliant reminder that not everyone is capable of growth or deep introspection.
It's a bit disheartening. But also very realistic.
It is.
Change doesn't happen overnight. And some people just remain stubbornly attached to their limited worldview, even when presented with evidence to the contrary.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our exploration of Pride and Prejudice, it's worth noting that the novel's brilliance lies not just in its captivating love story, but also in its astute social commentary. And the timeless questions it raises about human nature. And the choices we make.
It's a story that stays with you.
It does.
Long after you finish reading it.
Yeah.
And it prompts you to think about, your own life.
Yeah.
Your relationships and how you navigate those tricky social landscapes.
But before we get too philosophical, let's take a quick break. and come back for our final thoughts
Okay.
and some parting questions for our listeners. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Pride and Prejudice.
We've journeyed with Elizabeth and Darcy from their initial disdain to a place of mutual understanding and love, all while exploring Austen's social commentary and her insights into human nature.
It's been quite a ride now that we've reached the end. What resonates most with you?
That's a great question. I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways is just how relevant Austen's themes still are today. We might not be navigating those same rigid social structures, but we still face similar challenges when it comes to, forming judgments, dealing with societal expectations, and recognizing those Darcys and Wickhams in our own lives. Yeah, and it's a testament to Austen's genius, isn't it? That she can take these, universal human experiences and weave them into such a captivating story.
Totally. Think about Elizabeth's journey. She starts out so quick to judge, blinded by her pride and prejudice. But through those humbling experiences and self-reflection, she comes to see the world and everyone in it in a completely different light.
Her transformation is so beautifully rendered. It's not a sudden epiphany, but a gradual process of, confronting her own biases and challenging her preconceived notions. And in doing so, she becomes, more empathetic, understanding, capable of recognizing Darcy's true worth.
It's a reminder that we all have that capacity for growth and change, but it takes effort and a willingness to challenge our own perspectives.
Absolutely. And it's not always easy, is it? Look at Lady Catherine, so resistant to change, clinging to those rigid social hierarchies, refusing to acknowledge the shifting dynamics around her.
It's almost comical, but also a little bit sad. But it highlights the importance of choosing your own path, even when it means going against the grain or defying societal expectations. Elizabeth and Darcy ultimately find happiness by breaking free from those constraints and following their hearts.
Their union really represents a triumph over prejudice and a celebration of individual choice. It's a hopeful message that continues to resonate.
And it's not just the romantic relationships. Pride and Prejudice also offers a really nuanced portrayal of family dynamics.
Oh, for sure.
The Bennets are such a mess. But there's also a lot of love and humor there, even amidst all the chaos.
Austen captures the complexities of family life so well. You see the challenges of, navigating different personalities, the pressures of societal expectations, and the enduring bonds of love and loyalty that ultimately hold a family together.
Speaking of family, we can't forget about Mr. Bennet.
Oh, Mr. Bennet.
He's such a fascinating character, full of witty observations and dry humor.
He is.
But underneath that detached exterior, there's a depth of feeling and regret, and it adds another layer of poignancy to the story.
His initial skepticism about Elizabeth's choice, stemming from, his own unhappy marriage, is such a reminder that even the most cynical among us can be touched by love and hope for a better future for their loved ones.
And it's a beautiful moment when he finally gives his blessing, acknowledging the depth of Elizabeth and Darcy's connection and recognizing that potential for happiness that he himself missed out on.
It's a reminder that it's never too late to learn from our mistakes and to embrace the possibility of change and growth.
So, as we close the book on Pride and Prejudice, what are some final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think Austen offers us a timeless gift, this novel, a chance to reflect on our own lives and relationships, to challenge our assumptions, and to embrace the possibility of growth and transformation.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that even though the world's changed a lot since Austen's time, the complexities of human nature and the challenges of navigating societal expectations remain remarkably constant.
And that's why Pride and Prejudice, continues to resonate, offering both entertainment and insightful commentary on the human condition.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into this classic with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And for our listeners, we'd love to leave you with a few questions to ponder. What are the Darcys and Wickhams in your own life? How can you break free from those chains of prejudice and see the world with fresh eyes? And most importantly, what choices will you make to find true happiness and fulfillment?
Keep those questions in mind as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pride and Prejudice.
Happy reading, everyone!